Before there were cities, before there were walls, before there was even the sound of human footsteps echoing against stone, there was a garden, not a metaphor, not a distant symbol wrapped in poetry and abstraction, but a real place. A place with soil beneath your feet, air that moves across your skin, water that flows with purpose, and life, everywhere you look, unfolding in perfect, unbroken harmony. This is Eden. And if you expect something soft, dreamlike, or distant from reality, you will miss it completely, because Eden is not less real than the world you know. It is more. You arrive without gates, without borders, without warning. There is no threshold that announces, "You have entered." Instead, it reveals itself gradually. The ground changes first. Dry terrain gives way to something richer, darker soil, dense with life. Grass becomes thicker, softer underfoot. The air cools slightly, carrying moisture that wasn't there before. And then, sound. Water. Not faint, not distant, but present. Alive. You follow it instinctively, because in a world without corruption, without decay, without death, everything draws you toward life. And here, life is abundant beyond anything familiar. Trees rise around you, not scattered, not sparse, but layered in complexity. Their trunks are strong, rooted deep into soil that has never been exhausted. Their leaves are vibrant, not dulled by time or disease. Every branch feels intentional, every form complete. This is not wilderness as you know it. There is no chaos here, no struggle for dominance, no imbalance. Everything exists in relationship, in harmony. And as you move deeper, you begin to notice something that feels almost impossible to describe. Nothing here is aging, nothing is fading, nothing is breaking down. This is a world untouched by entropy, a world where time does not erode. The air itself feels different, clean, but more than that, full, as if every breath carries something deeper than oxygen, something sustaining in a way you've never experienced. You reach the water. It emerges from the ground with clarity so pure it almost reflects light differently. A spring, not forced, not violent, but steady, flowing outward into a river that winds through the garden. This is the beginning. From here, the water divides, not randomly, but with structure, with intention. 4 rivers branching outward, carrying life beyond the garden itself. You kneel beside the stream. The water is cool but not cold. It moves with a quiet strength, constant, unbroken, sustaining everything it touches. And as you look around, you begin to understand something profound. This place is not isolated. It is central. It is the source. Life flows from here, outward into the world. You stand again, and that's when you see them. Animals, not hidden, not cautious, not afraid. They move freely, some grazing, some resting, some simply existing in the space without urgency. There is no tension in them, no instinct to flee, no fear of you, because fear does not exist here. A lion walks past, not hunting, not stalking, but calm. Present. Its strength is visible, but it is not threatening. A bird lands nearby, its feathers catching the light in colors more vivid than anything dulled by time. It does not startle. It does not hesitate. It simply is. And somehow you understand it, not through language, but through connection. Because in Eden, separation has not yet entered the world. Nothing is divided against itself. Nothing is at war. You continue walking. The terrain shifts subtly, not dramatically, but with variation, gentle rises and dips in the land, open clearings surrounded by dense growth, areas where light filters through the canopy in patterns that feel almost intentional. And then, at the center of it all, you see something different, 2 trees, not because they are the largest, not because they are the most visually overwhelming, but because of what they represent, the tree of life, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They stand within the garden like anchors, points of meaning in a world already full of life. You approach slowly, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Because even in a world without corruption, there is choice. The tree of life feels sustaining, not just physically, but deeply, as if its presence alone reinforces everything around it. The other tree feels different, not evil, not dark, but weighty, significant. It carries something else, something that has not yet been experienced, and that is what sets it apart. Because Eden is not just a place of perfection, it is a place of possibility, and possibility always carries consequence. You step back, because this moment is not yours, not yet. There is someone else here, human, not shaped by struggle, not marked by time, but fully alive in a way no human has been since. Adam. He moves through the garden not as a visitor, but as one who belongs. Every step is natural, every interaction direct. He does not question his place here, because there is no separation between him and the world around him. He knows the animals, names them, not arbitrarily, but with understanding. Because to name something here is to recognize it fully, to see it as it is, and he does, completely. He walks near the water, pauses beneath trees, engages with the environment as if it responds to him, because it does. There is no barrier, no distance, and yet something is missing, not visibly, not obviously, but deeply. Because even in a world of perfection, there is something that has not yet been completed, and that realization will lead to the next moment. A moment that shifts Eden from complete to fully alive. But that moment has not happened yet. For now the garden breathes, the water flows, the trees stand, the animals move, and humanity exists in perfect harmony with it all, unaware of how fragile that harmony truly is. The garden does not rush. Nothing here hurries toward an outcome. There are no clocks, no deadlines, no sense that something must happen next. Time exists, but it does not press. It does not erode. It simply allows. And within that stillness, something begins to unfold. You watch Adam more closely now. There is strength in him, not the kind forged through struggle, but the kind that comes from being fully aligned with purpose. His movements are precise, effortless. He does not second-guess. He does not hesitate. But there is something else, a quiet awareness, not dissatisfaction, but incompleteness. Because even in a world where everything is good, something is not yet finished. The animals pass by him, paired, moving together in ways that reflect connection, companionship, and in that reflection, something becomes clear. Adam is alone, not isolated, not abandoned, but singular. And that distinction matters because in Eden, nothing is accidental. Everything is intentional. And this is the first moment where something is declared not good. Not because it is broken, but because it is incomplete. The garden holds its breath, not in tension, but in anticipation. Because what happens next is not a correction, it is a completion. Adam is led into rest, not exhaustion, not collapse, but a deep, purposeful stillness. And from that stillness, something new emerges. You don't see it happen in the way you expect. There is no spectacle, no dramatic display, just formation, careful, intentional. The same precision that shaped the world now shapes relationship. And when Adam wakes, he is no longer alone. Eve stands before him, not as an addition, not as an afterthought, but as a counterpart, equal in essence, different in form, perfectly aligned. And for the first time in the garden, you see recognition that goes beyond observation. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. The words are simple, but they carry something profound, because this is not just identification, it is connection, immediate, complete. There is no awkwardness, no uncertainty, no need to build trust over time. It exists instantly because it was designed that way. And from this moment forward, Eden changes, not in structure, not in beauty, but in experience, because now humanity is not just in relationship with creation, but with itself. You watch them move together through the garden. Their presence shifts the atmosphere, not because something new has been added, but because something has been fulfilled. They walk side by side, not leading, not following, but together. The animals respond to them both. The environment responds to them both. There is no imbalance, no hierarchy driven by control, only harmony. And in that harmony, something even deeper exists. They are known, fully, completely. There is nothing hidden, nothing concealed, no fear of exposure. Because there is nothing to hide, this is what innocence actually looks like, not naivety, not ignorance, but the absence of shame, the absence of fragmentation. They are whole, and because they are whole, they are free. You begin to notice another presence now, not distant, not abstract, but near. God walks in the garden, not as a force, not as something overwhelming or distant, but as presence, relational, accessible. This is not the distant deity of later human imagination. This is closeness, conversation, walking. You sense it in the way the garden responds, not with fear, but with alignment, because everything here is in order, everything is as it should be, and for a moment, you feel it fully. What existence is like without division, without internal conflict, without separation from the source of life itself? It is not overwhelming, it is right. And that is what makes what comes next so difficult to grasp, because nothing here suggests that it will be lost. Nothing appears fragile, nothing appears temporary, and yet it is. Not because of weakness in the design, but because of the presence of choice. You return your attention to the center of the garden, to the two trees. They have not changed. They stand as they always have, unmoving, present. But now their significance deepens, because now there are two humans, two beings capable of decision. The tree of life remains what it is, sustaining, reinforcing, giving. But the other tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, holds something that has not yet been experienced. Not evil itself, but the awareness of it, the distinction, the divide. And in a world where everything is unified, that possibility carries weight. They know of it, they have been told, clear, direct. You may eat from every tree except this one. The boundary is simple, not complex, not hidden. And in a place of abundance, it does not feel restrictive, it feels defined. A single line in a world without limitation. And for a time, that is enough. They move freely, live fully, experience everything without hesitation. The tree remains untouched, because there is no reason to question, no reason to doubt, no reason to reach beyond what has already been given. But then, something new enters the scene, not created in the same way, not aligned in the same way, a presence that introduces something Eden has not yet known. Subtlety, distortion, the serpent. It does not arrive with force. It does not disrupt the garden physically. It speaks, and in Eden, words carry weight. Because until now, words have only ever aligned with truth. But this is different. It begins with a question, simple, almost harmless. Did God really say? The moment hangs, because this is the first time. Doubt is introduced, not as a command, not as rebellion, but as possibility. And that changes everything, because now, the garden is no longer just a place of harmony. It is a place where trust can be questioned. And once that door opens, nothing remains the same. You feel it immediately. The shift is subtle, but irreversible, because Eden has just encountered something it was never designed to contain: distrust. And from that single moment, everything begins to move toward a choice that will reshape not just this garden, but all of human history. The question lingers longer than it should, not because it is complex, but because it is new. Did God really say? In a world where every word has always aligned with truth, the introduction of doubt doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like a whisper, soft, subtle, almost reasonable. And that is what makes it so powerful. Eve stands near the tree now, not far, not unaware, but closer than before, because attention has shifted. The tree that once held no pull now holds focus. You can feel it. The atmosphere has changed, not visibly, not physically, but internally. For the first time in Eden, there is tension, not conflict, not yet, but the beginning of it. The serpent does not force, it reframes. It takes what is clear and makes it feel incomplete. You will not surely die. The words are direct, contradicting what was once unquestioned, and then a suggestion. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, as if something is being withheld, as if what they already have is not enough. And that idea, small as it seems, begins to expand. Because now the tree is no longer just a boundary. It becomes a possibility, a doorway to something more. Eve looks at it differently now, not as something forbidden, but as something desirable. You see it in the way her attention lingers, in the way the tree's fruit is no longer just present, but appealing, good for food, pleasant to the eyes, desirable for gaining wisdom. The shift is complete, because now desire has been redirected, not toward what has been given, but toward what has been withheld. And that changes everything. Because in Eden, until this moment, there has never been a reason to reach beyond what already exists, but now there is. You feel the weight of it. The entire garden seems to hold still, not physically, but in meaning, because this moment is the pivot. Eve reaches. The movement is small, almost unremarkable, but its consequence is not. Her hand closes around the fruit. There is no resistance, no immediate sign of danger, no visible warning, because the act itself is the turning point. She eats, and then she gives it to Adam, and he eats, and in that instant, everything changes, not gradually, not slowly, but immediately. You feel it before you even see it, a fracture, not in the ground, not in the trees, but in perception. Their eyes open, not to beauty, they already had that, not to life, they were already living, but to something new, separation. They look at themselves, and for the first time, they feel exposed, vulnerable, not physically, but internally, because innocence is gone, not removed by force, but exchanged, and what replaces it is awareness. But not the kind they expected, not enlightenment, not elevation, but fragmentation. They see themselves differently, they see each other differently, and suddenly, what was once natural feels wrong. They cover themselves, not because anything has physically changed, but because everything has. Shame enters, and with it, the first instinct to hide. You feel the garden shift around them. Not in structure, the trees still stand, the river still flows, the animals still move, but the relationship between humanity and everything else has changed. And then, something even deeper. The presence they once welcomed now causes fear. They hear him, walking in the garden, the same presence, the same nearness. But now, it feels different, because they are different. They hide among the trees, as if the garden that once reflected their harmony can now conceal their fracture. Where are you? The question is not for information, it is for revelation, because something has been lost, not location, but connection. Adam answers, and his voice carries something it never has before. Fear. I was afraid, because I was naked, so I hid. And in that sentence, everything is revealed. Fear, exposure, separation. All things that did not exist, now exist. The unraveling continues. Questions, responses, blame. The woman you gave me, the serpent deceived me. Responsibility fractures just as perception did. Nothing remains whole. And then, consequence. Not as punishment alone, but as reality. Because the choice has altered the fabric of existence itself. The ground will resist. Pain will enter. Relationship will strain. Life will no longer flow effortlessly. And death will now exist. Not immediately, but inevitably. You feel the weight of it settle over the garden, because this is not just a moment of disobedience. It is the moment harmony breaks, the moment unity divides, the moment Eden ceases to be what it was. And yet, even now, it does not disappear. Not yet. It remains, but no longer as a place of unbroken life, but as a place that can no longer be stayed in. And that realization is heavier than anything that has happened so far. Because what was once home is about to be lost. The garden is still there. Nothing has collapsed. No trees have withered, no rivers have dried. The sky has not darkened into chaos. If you were to look at Eden from a distance, it would appear exactly as it did before. Perfect, untouched, alive. And yet, everything is different, because the change did not happen to the garden, it happened to them. Adam and Eve stand within the same world, but they no longer experience it the same way. The harmony that once defined every step, every breath, every interaction has been replaced. Not with destruction, but with distance. You can feel it in the silence now. It is no longer full, it is heavy. Where there was once openness, there is hesitation. Where there was once unity, there is awareness of separation, not just from each other, but from everything, and most of all, from God. They stand before Him, no longer uncovered in innocence, but shielded in their own attempt to fix what has broken. Fig leaves, fragile, temporary, insufficient, because what has been fractured cannot be restored from within. And this is the moment where something deeper is revealed. God does not respond with absence. He responds with action, not to ignore what has happened, but to address it fully. You watch as He provides garments, not leaves, but coverings made from skin. It is the first time something in creation gives its life, the first time death touches the world. And it happens here, in response to what has been lost. Because restoration, even in this moment, requires cost. The garments are placed on them, and while they cover the physical exposure, they also point to something far greater, a pattern, a promise, something that will echo far beyond Eden itself. But even with that, the reality remains. They cannot stay. Not because the garden has rejected them, but because their state has changed. You return your gaze to the center, to the tree of life, still standing, still what it has always been. But now it represents something different. If they take from it now, if they live forever in this fractured state, then brokenness becomes eternal, and that cannot be allowed. So the decision is made, not impulsively, not harshly, but necessarily. They are sent out. You feel the weight of that movement more than anything that has happened so far. Because leaving Eden is not just physical, it is existential. Every step away is a step into a world that will no longer respond the same way. The ground they walk on now will resist them. The environment that once sustained effortlessly will now require labor. The relationships that once flowed freely will now require effort. Everything has shifted. They turn back, at least once. Because how could they not? Behind them stands everything they have ever known, everything they were created for, everything that felt right. And now, it is no longer theirs to enter, not in the same way. And then, the boundary is set, not with walls, not with stone, but with something far more final. Cherubim placed at the entrance, and a flaming sword, moving, alive, guarding the way back to the Tree of Life. This is not just protection, it is separation, definitive, uncrossable. Eden remains, but access is gone. You stand there for a moment between two realities. Behind you, the garden, still perfect, still untouched by decay, still exactly as it was created to be. And ahead, the world as it will now unfold. A world that will carry both the memory of Eden and the consequences of its loss. And that tension will define everything that comes next. Because humanity will never fully forget this place, even if it cannot return. The memory of harmony will echo through every generation, in longing, in questions, in the deep, unexplainable sense that something is missing, something that once existed and was lost. You take one final look at the garden. The rivers still flow, the trees still stand, the light still falls across it with the same quiet perfection. Nothing about Eden itself has diminished, because the loss was never about the place. It was about the relationship. And that is what makes it so powerful, because it means that what was lost is not just location, it is connection, and that connection will become the central story of everything that follows. From this moment on, humanity will build cities, create systems, form civilizations, but none of it will fully replace what was once experienced here. Because Eden was not just the beginning, it was the standard, the design, the original intention. And even now, standing outside it, you can still feel it, faint, distant, but undeniable. That sense that the world as it is now is not how it was meant to be, and that realization is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a search, a longing, a movement toward restoration, because what was lost in a garden will not remain lost forever. But that is a story that unfolds far beyond this moment. For now, Eden stands, untouched, unreachable, and unforgettable. And if you listen closely, beyond the silence, beyond the distance, beyond the guarded entrance, you can almost hear it. Not as sound, but as memory of a world once whole, of humanity once complete, of a place where heaven and earth were not separate, but one. And the question it leaves behind still lingers.